Coming to you from Milwaukee, Wisconsin by way of Stone Mountain, Georgia, birthed by the great state of South Carolina, is the Bryant Land Country Podcast, your place for any and everything in hunting, fishing, sports, and outdoor related, with heavy doses of randomness, guests, and an all-around good time. Here's your host, proud Gamecock, South Carolina forever, AB3.
Welcome to another episode of the Bryant Land Country Podcast. I am your host, AB3. Thank you for joining us this week. We are greatly appreciative for you to take the time to download, rate, subscribe, and review everything that you've done to help the Bryant Land Country Podcast, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, Radio Play, TuneIn app, whichever medium you use to consume your podcast. Hopefully you're consuming it right off of the brand new BryantLandCountry.com website. But either way, we are glad that you have taken the time to listen to the podcast. This week, we have DJ Jones as the guest. DJ is a Florida native who kind of, like myself, is a Southerner transplanted into the Midwest, into the Minnesota area. DJ runs a very exciting YouTube page where he's taking the time to film some of his hunts up in Minnesota and Wisconsin. So we get into a conversation, just a little bit about his athletic background, a little football and stuff like that, and then just get his takes on some of his hunting experiences. So not a whole lot to for me to jibber jabber about. Let's just dive in and you guys kick back and listen to my conversation with DJ Jones on the Bryant Land Country Podcast. So you gotta really appreciate somebody who will take the time to talk to you while they're in the middle of ringing up fishing poles. So first let me say thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt the fishing progress.
Yeah, you're not interrupting the fishing progress. It's just I should have done it earlier. You know, I woke up a little bit later than what I normally would do today, and I went jogging, which I typically try to do at least maybe 5 days out of the week. So I went jogging a little bit, later than what I normally would for my normal routine, and I got back, to the house, and I didn't feel tired, so I was like, I'm going to go back and start running again. So I ran another 2 miles and came back and was like, all right, now I'm feeling how I'm supposed to feel, and I went back inside. So I could have done it earlier, but I decided, to go out and get my morning run, and it's all good. And
so it's funny because, I jotted down a couple of things of how I wanted things to go in order or whatnot, but since you brought it up, the one thing that jumped out at me was I saw MMA and kickboxer, and now you telling me about the morning run and the jog 5 days a week. I mean, so what's going on there? You got belts in kickboxing and whatnot? Were you a former athlete, or are you still, doing some athletic competitions? What you got going on?
Well, I always try to keep something going on. My entire childhood, I was a multi-sport athlete. I played football, basketball, and baseball growing up in North Florida. So being an athlete was something that was natural to me. I've had family members that were able to go off and play and do some great things at some of the local colleges. And, my next door neighbor ended up making it into the NFL in the second round. His name is Daniel Thomas. He ended up playing for the Miami Dolphins. So growing up watching him playing football and stuff like that, it really motivated me to be the next football star in our little community. But as I got older, I decided to stop playing the other sports because I found out that my true passion was football. I got really passionate about football. And it's almost like some of those typical stories that you hear, how football is an escape for some people. Football was an escape for me, and it was something I was really passionate at because I started playing it at a young age, and my skills started to develop. I started to build, brotherhoods and relationships with different people. I got to travel, and, it was always fun winning and playing and, being a kid and having fun, down in Florida. Because, Florida is a big football state. It's basically like the college recruiting capital of the world besides, Florida and Louisiana. So it's something that we eat, sleep, and we breathe down there. We have a lot of kids, because now I'm in the Midwest, and I was able to look back and think back, on how some of these kids in the Midwest, they don't have that work ethic about them because growing up where I grew up from, you have people that are dedicated to their grind 365 days out of the year. So as an athlete, if you want to get better, you got to continuously practice. You got to continuously work out. You got to eat healthy. You got to put yourself in that position to be a better football player. And for me, I'm not that big. So, I'm about 5'8", 5'9". In high school, I was like 5'7", 5'8", maybe. So I wasn't really that big. But what I was able to do for myself, and I always had a dream of going off and playing, college ball, because I seen too many of my family members, who were way better athletes than me. They were, smarter than me academically, and they had a lot of opportunities from different colleges, but, they didn't get to go to the colleges they wanted to go to due to some of these, these powerhouses that are recruiting, that are getting some of the top kids in the entire country. And, it was more of a situation where, they wanted to go to the University of Florida when they should have went down to a Division I AA school where they were able to play. And growing up watching that, I knew that I didn't care what division I played in. I knew I was still going to make an impact. So growing up in high school, I was able to lead my division in 4A football. My senior year of high school, I was able to lead my division and the entire state of Florida in 4A in kickoff and punt return yardage. I think I had like 25 or 26 returns for close to maybe almost 930, 940 yards. And the kicker about that was I didn't even do kickoff and punt return yardage and that type of stuff until maybe 4 or 5 games into the season. So I know I would have easily broken over 1,000 yards in kickoff return yardage if I'd have been able to do it from the beginning of the season. But it was one of those things where, I was always overlooked as an athlete because, I wasn't the worst, but then again, I wasn't the best, but my work ethic always stood out. So I was always the guy, that was, if anybody knows me, knows I love talking trash. And especially, when it comes to sports, like football, I was one of those kids where it was almost like a Jalen Ramsey type of trash talk kind of thing. If that can put it into perspective, like I'm gonna talk trash to you, I'm gonna talk trash to your coach, I'm gonna talk trash to your cheerleaders and everybody that's coming to support you, because I'm just that competitive. And a lot of kids,
not the cheerleaders.
Yeah, them too. I was that type of guy where everybody that supported you, I wanted them to feel bad for supporting you, because what I'm getting ready to do to you in this type of game, all your recruiters, the people that are talking to you, I want them to come and talk to me after the game, after watching you go off to your Under Armour camps and your Nike camps, and your Steve Spurrier and Dan Mullen football camps, Urban Meyer football camps. And, growing up down in Florida, I played against some of the best athletes in the world. I played against a guy that won a Heisman a few years ago at the University of Alabama who goes by the name of Derrick Henry. And 15 minutes in the opposite direction, our school used to play Nice High School, which everybody knows that's the famous high school of one of the greatest college football quarterbacks of all time, Tim Tebow. So growing up down there, if you wanted to be the best, you were going to have that opportunity to play against the best. And unfortunately for me, I didn't get a lot of recruiting offers because of my school. It was a 4A school, which is kind of almost like mid-level. So it's like we played against some of the greatest athletes, to play the game of football. And even guys like Derrick Henry, we played against Division I athletes with at least 2 or 3 signed Division I athletes my senior year on every team. We might have played one team that year that did not have a Division I athlete on it. Being in that environment, I just took that hard work ethic, and mentality, every single week to practice. Like I was getting after people verbally and I was getting after people physically, and it ended up getting me a little bit of recruiting offers, but, I was able to get kind of misguided, by my father, because as a child and recruiting violations were getting so prominent my senior year. And as these recruiting violations started to come up more and more, they have certain schedules the recruiters have to abide by. And me being only 17 years old, I wasn't allowed to talk to a recruiter because I was a child. They would have to talk to my parents in some of these recruiting processes. And I'm in school, I'm in class, and, I'm getting emails and stuff, but they're actually talking to my father. My father had more dreams of me going to a place like University of Florida, but I was only getting, hard interest in some offers from some Division I AA schools that my father, he felt like, as a father, you always want the best for your kids. You always want them to be at the best place they can be at, play for the best team that they can play for. And I can't 100% say that it was my father's fault. I can't 100% say that, things would have been different, but I'm happy with the way things ended up going out. So what I was able to do is I was able to get with a bunch of my kids, other kids from different schools my senior year, from First Coast High School. First Coast High School is a powerhouse in Northeast Florida.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that school.
Yeah, First Coast High School, the Buccaneers, and then just to think about the talent pool where I come from and where I played football at growing up. We would play teams with caliber athletes of Trinity Christian. We played against them. We played against teams like First Coast, or these big 5A and 6A schools that are going off and they're winning state titles. Like, we only play them, once a year. So I'd always get jacked up to play these guys. But the year that I played First Coast High School, which for them, they had like, I want to say 13 or 14 Division I signees into major Division I colleges. They had a kid by the name of Chris Black, who was the number 1 wide receiver in the nation at the time. And he ended up, he was committed to Florida State. He ended up going to Alabama. And that was kind of my breakout game for them because they had a bunch of Division I scouts at that game. And I wanted to dominate those guys. Like, just hearing about them all week, I'm getting able to go on YouTube. I'm looking at all their highlights, and just, I'm the type of person where, I'm self-motivated. I don't need people to motivate me to get up for a competition or for a fight, whether it be kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, mixed martial arts, football, weightlifting, whatever it may be. I've never needed anybody to motivate me. So playing against them, that if I had to say that was probably one of my best games, it was one of my best games. I had like 13 tackles that game, playing strong safety, and then I had 5 kickoff returns for like 231 or 237 yards or something like that. And at this point in the season, First Coast was shutting people out. So I was able to get the first kickoff return and take it back close to, 51, 52 yards before I got pushed out of bounds. And we were able to drive the ball down the field and score. That game was it was a complete war, but it ended up turning out to be a blowout because, the talent ended up becoming overwhelming for some of our players. But I ended up being the Burger King player of the week that week for my defensive efforts and for my special team effort. And I was the first player that year against First Coast to break over 200 yards in any form or category. So nobody passed for over 200 yards against them on their defense. Nobody rushed for over 200 yards or 100 yards. I was the first person that year, and it ended up getting me a little bit of publicity and a little bit of recruiting, interest from different schools after seeing what I'd done to such, high caliber talent. Their linebacking core that year, they had a guy who went by the name of Reggie Northrop. He led the ACC at Florida State in tackles his senior year, like that type of talent. We had a bunch. We had another kid from that team who started at the University of Florida. We had another one that started at the University of North Carolina. That's just their linebacking core. That's not even talking about their strong safeties that they had. Tyrell ended up going to Florida State. A big kid, 6'2", 215, 220 pounds, running a 4.4, close to almost a 4.3. Playing strong safety and free safety. So it's like playing against some of those guys. Competitively, like it brought the better out of me and it brought the best out of me. So it's like going through that type of stuff, I was able to take that hard work and that mentality into everything else that I was able to apply it to in life. So when I got to junior college, it's the same thing. I had a couple guys that were in front of me that were athletically, I had no problem admitting if somebody was better than me, but I wouldn't let it, get to me on the field because I knew that whenever my number was called, I was going to make the most out of my opportunity. So ended up in junior college. I got a couple, interests from other, Division I schools, Division II schools, but most likely we were a lower level junior college school. Like our school didn't even have or even give out scholarships. So I went there with a bunch of the guys, who couldn't cut it academically at First Coast High School, but they were still great guys. They were great players. I was able to learn a lot from them. We ended up going to junior college together. And my sophomore year, I ended up being in the top 15 in the NJCAA and kickoff return yardage. And I ended up almost being an All-American, but I ended up losing because there was a guy from a rival school called Ridgewater College. I ended up having more kickoff return yardage. He ended up having more punt return yardage. I had a kickoff return touchdown. He had a punt return touchdown. So the NJCAA and the Minnesota Coastal Athletic Commission or whatever it is for JUCO here ended up, flipping a coin toss, and he was able to get the All-American honors for special teams because of a coin toss. So it was kind of like one of those things that was like, it is what it is. I guess, it was fine. So.
It's almost like the spelling bee that happened a couple of days ago. It's just like that's a unique way to declare a winner. Like the spelling bee, they ran out of words or whatever, so they had 8 winners. So in your case, they just basically you guys were tied and they flipped a coin.
Flipped a coin, and I still blame my coach for that because he called the wrong side. So I blame him. He called the wrong side.
Right.
But it is what it is what it is.
While you were in school, through high school and doing all this stuff, were you hunting all through this time as well? Was this something that was introduced to you early on?
Yeah, I come from a really big hunting trapping and fishing family. It's like my post you see on Instagram. Being an outdoorsman is a family tradition for me. Grandparents done it. Their grandparents done it. As a matter of fact, like, this tradition is so strong. Like, I still have family members that stay in the same places where our family was introduced in the slavery era. Like, that's how deep the tradition runs in my family when it goes down to hunting and fishing. We have tons of pictures and family photos that, if I were down in Florida, I'd be able to get them and share them with you guys. But, I have to, get on my dad about sending me some of them, because I know a lot of people like seeing some of those older photos, But hunting for me, I've been hunting for as long as I can remember. My dad started taking me hunting when I was around the age of maybe 3 to 4 years old. I know you're from the South, from South Carolina, so, he introduced me to hunting by going deer dog hunting. That was one of the first forms of hunting I was able to do. And my dad was he was mostly the dog man whenever he would go, because my dad was a great dog trainer. So he'd always train, some of the best walker hounds and some of the best blue ticks that some of the people that knew him would always know and respect what he would have in the back of his truck. He would always say, son, we don't ever have any mutts or any of those non-deer runners in the back of my truck. He would always get rid of them. And, when it came down to puppies, if they weren't producing at a young age, he would always sell them and get rid of them and always try to keep the best of the best. But as I got older, I had my uncle. I love my uncle. My uncle was like a second father to me, whenever my dad was working, because, he worked really to provide for us public for over 20-some plus years. Whenever my dad was working on weekends and stuff like that, he knew that I was very passionate about hunting. I was very passionate about fishing. So what he would do is he would come by, and I still think they butt heads about this, when I was younger, because I knew that if I ever wanted to go hunting and fishing on the weekends, all I had to do was call my uncle. He would come and pick me up. He would literally, he wouldn't even call and ask my mom. He would not call and ask my dad. If I called my uncle, he was coming to pick me up, and we were going hunting and we were going fishing. And it wasn't just me, my uncle, my great grandma has 7 kids. She has 5 boys, 2 girls. So my uncle made a pact to always, try to take as many of his nieces and nephews out into the woods and out on the water as possible. And, that was something that we've always done. And so all throughout, elementary school and middle school and even high school and college, we've all hunted. I kind of got sad, when I started realizing that, whenever my uncle, he's getting up in age now, his health isn't always the best right now, because I think he has emphysema and he has asthma, so his lungs are really bad. So he doesn't really go out and hunt as much as he used to. Because when I left off for college back in 2012, he started hunting less and less, because, I was out there, taking care of him. I was out there, hanging stands for him, getting corn and everything set up, checking the trail cameras, doing all this stuff, for him, so I could make it easier on him, because I knew that he wanted to hunt. But sometimes during the week, he would be too tired from work to go out and do the stuff that you would have to do in order to harvest a deer. So I would always pick up the slack. So, whenever I would get done, with a football practice or weightlifting or, basketball or baseball, I would jet back over to his house, hop on the wheeler, put corn out, feed his dogs, clean out some of the kennels and help him out as best I could. But for my family, hunting and fishing has been something that we've always done. Like, I can't think of a time where my family has never hunted and fished. And growing up in North Florida, our city that I grew up in is called Hilliard, Florida. So we're the last city before you get into Charlton County, Georgia. So we're like the band's Florida-Georgia line. Literally, that's where we live at. Like, we're right there on the line. The only thing that splits us up between us and Georgia, is the river. That's it. Mostly everybody in my family, we've always hunted, we've always fished. We've gotten into hog hunting. That was something that was kind of new to us when we got some property, maybe I want to say early 2005, 2006. We purchased a good little size of a swamp. There was maybe 70 to 80 acres.
Wow.
And we had been noticing, because the property butts up to a farm, a cook farm. A lot of my people that are listening to this from Callahan, Florida, know exactly what I'm talking about, on Bypass Road. It butts up to Cook's property. Cook, somebody in the area started letting go some of these wild feral hogs, because I know they're a problem in Florida, they're a problem in Georgia, Alabama, and a lot of places on the South, especially the Southeast coast. So
yep.
They started being introduced more and more into the area as they started, populating like they do, because, they don't have a specific time of year when they breed all year. We started, hog hunting a little bit later, maybe 2006, 2007, and then that's what really had sparked some of my interest in the hog hunt, because, we started, killing some of these hogs, to get them off of the property in the off season. And sometimes we would see them during the season, but it's almost like, they'll come through our property depending on a specific time of the year. When it's summertime, they would always be on our property, because we have those swamps, which would typically keep them cooler. And we would always try to run some minerals and attractants and stuff like that for, the deer during the summer, so they can get the vitamins and the proteins and stuff that they need to grow. They would always come in. So we started hunting them, during the summers and during the spring and even sometimes during hunting season. So
Now, do y'all run them with dogs?
now we've had people that have asked us to come in and do it, but I always say that I got a good old, I got a group of good old boys from Callahan, Florida, Cody Godwin and Mike Park with the A-Team hog dogs. I'll probably have to have you guys look at them and share some of the hogs they catch. They would always get on to me about, asking my dad or asking my uncle, to let them come out and a hog hunt. But the thing about that is, you got a lot of people that, that they do not take trespassing lightly. And
right.
We don't have any fences or major fences in between our property and their property. And, the game warden does not take it lightly when you're running animals like that onto somebody else's property. And then you have to trespass to go in there and get them. And, like those hog dogs do, they could bay 500, 600, 700, 800 yards away, depending on where those hogs are at. And
right. They don't know borders.
Yeah, like what some of those southern swamps are like. We have some places that have alligators in their water moccasins, cottonmouths, you name it, your typical Florida swamp. So I would always have those guys. They would get on to me at football practice, like, "Hey, did you ask your dad we can come out? Ask your uncle if we can come out, and chase some of these hogs." But it's something that that I want to do, and if I probably ever do it, I'll probably get with some of those guys, like Mike Park and Cody Godwin. I'll end up sharing some of the stuff that they got. So I mean, those good old boys in Callahan, they grew up same as I did, hunting, fishing, playing sports. And if I have to say that's something that was introduced to our family kind of late in the heritage in our generation, it's probably hog hunting. Everything else, trapping, raccoons, possums, you name it. Basically, our family, we got somebody that does it or eats it. So growing up as a kid, that was that was my favorite thing to do. I would always go out and try and get gray squirrel, or sometimes cottontail rabbits would always be like one of my favorite small game animals to try and target, because I always had a BB gun growing up. So I had a Daisy Powerline 8880. Shout out to Daisy. I would always have one of those.
Not the old Daisy. Wow.
The Daisy Powerline 8880. This was before Gammo and all the one-cock BB guns were even coming into play. I would always try to get up, and my dad would probably tell you this too, that I got in trouble for it a lot too. As a kid growing up, if I didn't have, or if I had a basketball game later around 8 or 9 a.m., the minute it would be daylight, I would throw on my mossy oak camel, grab my BB gun, grab some pellets, and I would work my way out into the woods. And all I would hear, when my dad would wake up and they would realize that I wasn't in my room, they would yell some things that I can't repeat, but it would always end to get my, myself back in the house. So I would always do that. So growing up, that was always fun to me. And we would always like to find somebody in the community that would either eat the rabbits and the squirrels that we would give, or we would eat them ourselves. So, because a lot of the people in the community would be up in age, they would be older. So we would always, trap the raccoons, clean them, give them to them. Because, with that Southern heritage and growing in the South, a lot of people would like eating raccoons. Some of them would even eat possum and ask us if we trapped any of them, or if we got any of them, to give them to them. So we would always end up doing that. So as a kid, that was always something that we loved doing.
I would imagine that no matter how mad your dad was at you when you came back with a couple of squirrels or a couple of rabbits or whatever, I'm pretty sure that squared you guys away.
It did, but he would always be bad because, when you kill those types of animals, you would always get blood and stuff on you. So he wouldn't want me out on the basketball court, with blood under my fingernails or something like that. Or on the field or something like that.
So you grew up in North Florida, and then your dad, I saw the picture with your dad hunting in South Carolina with his friend, and like you were saying, running dogs in South Carolina. What parts of South Carolina, and was that just like a road trip that your dad would take every year?
Well, in the early 90s, when I was just, knee-high to a grasshopper, he would always deer dog hunt. I think the name of their hunting club, if I'm remembering the stickers on the back of that Z71 right, the name of their club was called, I want to say Catholic Hill Hunting Club. So somewhere in South Carolina, it was which is rare nowadays, it was an all-black hunting club. And they own property in South Carolina, like most hunting clubs do. They would have like these tree companies that would lease the property out to them, and they would do that. But my dad, that deer that he killed with the late Pastor R.J. Washington, who had the Titus Harvest Dome, who's broadcasted, almost every Sunday on the TBN network. He found out that the R.J. Washington was a hunter too, so they ended up getting together one or two times. They ended up going to Georgia because R.J. had property in Georgia, so they hunted in Georgia together. Then they had somebody invite them come up to hunt their property in South Carolina, so my dad went. And I was a little bit jealous at the time because I remember we weren't speaking at that time. that I would always hear about all these other kids that are going on these hunting trips with their other family members, and with their dad. And I'm finally of age to go, and he didn't want to take me with him because he was invited, as a guest. It was one of those things as a child, you don't really think much about it. But as I got older, I was able to understand that, he was a guest, so how can he bring, his son with him when he's a guest as well? So, yeah, he shot.
Right.
That was his last buck and his biggest buck to date. He shot that back in 2008. I remember I was in 8th grade when he shot that one with Pastor R.J. Washington. But R.J. Washington lost a battle to cancer here not too long ago. I want to say maybe 3 going on almost 4 years ago. But my dad has always hunted in the Carolinas, and we've always had groups because, some of us southern hunters, they would always travel to different states to hunt deer, and it was no different for my dad either. So he had a couple of buddies that he worked with from Publix and from one of his best friends named James, who works at General Motors. They would always go out and go and hunt South Carolina and North Carolina. So they would do it deer dog hunting, and sometimes, when he got older and he got into working more to provide for the family, he quit deer dog hunting and started only still hunting down in Northeast Florida. That was something that they had done since the 90s.
He's still doing a lot of still hunting till this day.
Well, once he retired from Publix, he went independent with his own truck and with his own 18-wheeler truck. So it was like he doesn't hunt as much as he wants to now because he's self-employed. So he works a lot more, but he can choose to take off when he wants to, but he doesn't. I know right now he has his hands full with my mom because my younger sister has 3 kids, so they're always babysitting the 3 kids whenever she's going to work, so he can't get out and hunt as much as he wants to. The last time he hunted was when he came up with me back in 2017 when we hunted in Wisconsin, and, he had a blast. He still gets on to me about me not letting him shoot like, a 2-year-old whitetail that was running across in front of him. I think we even got it on picture too. I mean, it was a big 2-year-old. I mean, he was close to 205 pounds, but he wanted to shoot it because he only hunted in the South his entire life. So when he got up here to the Midwest, he was able to see how big these whitetails are when you get up here. And that was one of the biggest shocks for me too, was when I first came over, just seeing the difference in these deer body sizes and stuff like that and the genetics that come with it. So
Yes, especially compared to Florida, like the deer that I see back home in Georgia and South Carolina. When you start talking about Wisconsin and Illinois and places like that, man, these deer are monsters. They make our deer look like little babies.
Yeah, they do. And a lot of people think that they should be easy to kill because they look that little. And I try to tell people all the time, when they ask me and they message me, if you could choose to hunt in the North or the South, which one would you choose to hunt in? I was like, it's always hard for me when people ask me that question because, growing up hunting in the South, there's so many different species that you can hunt. You can stay hunting year round. Like when deer season is over with, you can hunt wild hog year round on your property and everything else like that. But growing up here in the Midwest, as I became a man, hunting season only one time a year. After that, you don't have anything else you can hunt. Then you got to wait until turkey season, but I never really turkey hunted. In Minnesota, the turkey population isn't that high. It's starting to boom. It's starting to boom now due to their reproduction, and they're migrating to different parts of the state. But when I first got here in 2012, I could really count, the number of encounters that I've had with turkeys on one hand, and then now it's like I see flocks of, of 20 or 30 birds, on the lease now. It's grown and it's getting different.
What brought you to Minnesota and Wisconsin? Because I know for me it was work, and when people ask me, it's like, which do I prefer? Obviously I like hunting at home because you're on your own place, you kind of know where things are and stuff like that. But I also tell people that one of the best things about living in the Midwest is being able to hunt these deer and then duck hunt and goose hunt and turkey hunt and the fishing up here. So, but what brought you to Minnesota and Wisconsin?
Well, what originally brought me to Minnesota was back in 2012. I went to junior college, so that's what brought me here. I came to pursue an education and play football, and I was able to do that. So I went to Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College. It's the only tribal and community college in the entire, country, and I take a lot of pride in that because it's an American Indian school. Culturally, I got to come and learn firsthand about the American Indian culture, and it's one of the most beautiful cultures that that we have on the planet, in my opinion. So our school, that is definitely
a great experience.
Yeah. It to be honest, it was kind of different for me because being an 18-year-old kid growing up down in almost a melting pot down in Florida where we have so many different cultural diversities down there. You grew up with it. You grew up associating and communicating and interacting with people that are different races. So then when I got up here in the Midwest like it is, we don't have a lot of cultural diversity up here. And then for God to bring me to Fond du Lac Tribal Community College, the only American Indian College and tribal and community college in the entire country. It was a blessing to learn more about somebody else's culture, while I'm in school. We have powwows, we have blessings, we have feasts, we have different types of things that you get to actually see firsthand, not something that you like. It's different when you watch it on TV and you see certain things that are portrayed differently, but to actually watch it firsthand right in front of you and it's primary information, like it's amazing just watching a drum fest. It's amazing showing up to a feast. Like I couldn't have been more blessed to go to the college where I was at. And luckily for me, I was able to walk away from 2 degrees from that college. I was able to walk away with my AS in law enforcement and my AA. And, that's a blessing. I was the first person in my family to go to college, my immediate family to go to college, and then to graduate with 2 degrees within 2 years. It was a major blessing for me.
Wow. And then you just stayed up there and continued to work and pursue your career in law enforcement?
Yeah, man. And that's been all I've done. I went and I played football for the University of Minnesota Duluth, and they just won the men's Division I hockey national championship 2 years in a row back to back. But what a lot of people don't know is how dominant their football team is. Their football team is a very dominant team as well. So I had an opportunity at the University of Minnesota Duluth as well. So I've continued to stay here and I've continued to work and kind of get those jobs that are going to give me the experience that I needed to whenever I start my career in law enforcement. I can rely on that experience so I can be the best, officer I can be for whatever department or agency that decides to invest in me. I can't really complain too much about it. And growing up in Florida too has taught me a lot, when it comes down to learning the streets and learning some of these about these differences and these subtle differences in communities and different, dialects and different contents of the United States. So growing up in the South has helped me a lot tremendously, and living in the Midwest has helped me a lot tremendously. So, and going into law enforcement, I'm able to rely on some of that, that upbringing from being in the South and, communicating with different races and coming up to the Midwest and communicating with people of different races. It helps me communicate greatly. And in law enforcement, communication is probably the next most important thing other than safety.
Right.
Communication is key. Even in some of my experiences working as, as a correctional officer and as a security officer right now at a major hospital, I get to use my verbal judo, is what they say in law enforcement, and my de-escalation skills almost daily. It's a tough environment to work in from time to time, because I'm a security officer right now, but I'm being backgrounded by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. But I'm also going through skills right now so I can become a Minnesota licensed peace officer. So I have to go through skills so I can take the post test. So I have a few departments that are interested in me. And I'm still, going to school finally, because when I graduated, I was in a weird place because your skills certification is only good for 3 years. So whenever I graduated from the university, whenever I graduated from Fine Light Tribal and Community College, I had to make a decision. Am I going to go through skills right now while I'm going through, going to go through school at the University of Minnesota Duluth for the next 2 years and only leave myself 1 year with my post eligibility and with my skills to get a job? So I had to talk with my family, talk with my coaches, and prayed on it. So I decided not to go through skills. And now here I am, 5 years later, going back through skills. So now I've matured. Now I have a little bit of a job resume underneath me. I have a little bit more life experience going into that next chapter of my law enforcement career. So I can't complain too much. I've been blessed.
It sounds like you've made the adjustment from Florida to Minnesota pretty well, because I know for me, it wasn't as bad this time around because I had lived in the Northeast, so I lived in the cold and was able to make that adjustment. But for you, it sounds like you're making it pretty well, and you got a successful career, and you got some great places to hunt.
Yeah, for me, the transition, when I first got up, it was hard. It was extremely hard because, I went from being around, family members and loved ones to getting on a plane, flying 1,500 miles across the country, and not knowing anyone other than my football coaches and some of the gentlemen that I had trained with from First Coast High School, and my first semester, it was kind of like it was really tough trying to adjust to the college lifestyle because, you didn't have mom waking you up anymore. You didn't have dad, telling you to get up and go do this so you can get ready for school and do that and get ready for school. You had to have a lot of self-discipline, and I had a great teacher named Miss Roberts my senior year in high school. Something she had said to me earlier in my senior year of high school. As an African-American man, I know there's not a lot that's going to be expected of us growing up in Florida because, most African-American men growing up in Florida by the age of 18 are supposed to be, like either dead or in jail or been shot or have been taken over by the streets. But luckily for me, I've always had a family that loved and that has cared for me and have gave me that out with being an outdoorsman. So I've been able to hunt. I've been able to fish. I've been able to play sports. I've been able to grow up, into a good family with great tradition and great morals and great ethics. So my senior year, she was one of the teachers that it pushed me the most. And to be honest, I hated her. I had a girlfriend. My girlfriend was in my class. I was trying to be the class clown and everything like that. I'm on the football team. I got another best friend. Who was another African American man. He was very successful as well. He was in the class with me in the first, and literally the first day of class, she pulls both of us to the side and tells us, write down your mother's phone number, write down your father's phone number. So I'm looking at my homie, and he's looking at me. I'm like, what? What is her deal? And she told us, she's like, I'm telling you right now, I know the potential that you guys have. You're smart. I know you guys can do better than what you've been doing. Academically, I'm going to push you guys. And I know the coach's, name. I know his telephone number. And, we always thought that she was bluffing, about this kind of stuff. Literally the second week of school, she made us go and get, progress reports signed by all of our teachers. She's like, I don't expect anything less than a 3.0 each 9 weeks from both of you guys. And I was like, this lady is really crazy. She's acting like, she's acting like she runs the show or whatever, right?
Right.
So then going through that with her, she told me early in the year she wanted me to write down, five goals I wanted to do, and she made everyone in the class do it. So she made me write down a goal, and she told me in 5 years I'm going to come back and see her, and I'm going to bring back those college degrees. And I'm like, she's crazy. I don't even know if I'm going to go to college. I don't even know if I'm even going to like college, kind of thing. And she ended up being hard on me that entire year, and it ended up resulting in the best because I was able to get the test scores I needed to get into college, and I was able to be everything that she saw in me. And when I got to college my freshman year, something she had said to me, had really stuck out to me.
Right.
She told me, DJ, there's a few things that can happen to you when you get to college. She was like, you can be an athlete and play for however many years until your eligibility runs out. You can get there and play and get hurt and walk away with nothing. She said you can show up to college, you can walk away with some debt and some injuries from playing football, or you can show up, get a degree, and transfer to another 4-year university if you want to. She was like, you have unlimited possibilities. But there is one thing that's going to happen. If you don't have the self-discipline that you need to get up and go to the class, the mom and dad ain't going to be there for you. They're not going to wash your clothes. They're not going to feed you. You're going to be on your own. You're going to be responsible for your grades. You're going to be responsible for being the man that you need to be. I'm not going to be there for you. I've already went to college. I have my degree. And she points to hers over on the desk and everything else like that. I want you to get to that point. I'm going to tell you how you can get to that point. And sure enough, she told me, you're going to come back in 5 years and you're going to thank me for everything that I'm telling you now. So I was able to come back and show her both my degrees, and she ended up crying. She was like, I saw that in you. I knew that was in you, and I pushed you to get that. But that degree isn't for me. That degree is for you. She's like, those 2 degrees that you got right there are going to be able to help you get more jobs. You're going to get paid better. And you're going to be able to have a better life because you were able to go to college and do what you wanted to do, regardless of all your football accomplishments. She goes, those 2 are going to be your greatest accomplishments. And
wow.
She, she didn't lie to me about that. It was almost like, she was able to predict what was going to happen because she had been there. She had the experience. So I was happy to have some individuals that were going to push me to be where I wanted to be. And even, with coaches.
Helping you set the table, so to speak.
Yeah. And, first, I kind of thought, she was talking crazy, she's just trying to bully us, so to say, or I thought she was just acting silly, but no, she was just telling people how it was going to go. And it went exactly how she said it was going to go. And the same thing went on, happening with one of my best friends, too. He was able to go to college, played football for 4 years, and he was able to get, his bachelor. So it was like we did what she said, she was going to do and what she wanted us to do and the goals that we set. So that was probably one of the roughest things was that initial first semester was probably the roughest part in that transition. But when it came down to hunting and fishing, I hated it because it was not like, growing up in Florida, hunting and fishing, is legal to bait.
Right.
And in Minnesota, you can't bait. You're not allowed to bait. When I got here, my main priority was, was my education and was football. With my education and with football and everything going like that, I didn't really have a lot of time to hunt because I was always at football practice. Football season is always during hunting season. So it's like, you can never get away from it. You can pray that coach lets you out early today so you can go ahead and try to get in the stand. Or, if you got a home game this weekend, you can try to hope that coach gives you Sunday off, but that wasn't really how it went. So those first initial, because it took me 4 years to finally get my first buck in Minnesota. It took me 4 years.
And that was on public land?
No, actually, the two bucks that I've harvested have all been on, leases. I've had opportunities at deer on public land, but it was one of those things where it's like, I didn't want to shoot some of the bucks that I was finding because, as a hunter, I won't really say that I'm out hunting trophies because everybody always has like their own definition of what a trophy buck is or what a trophy animal is. Like I want to shoot something that is going to provide meat for my family and something that's going to look nice on my wall for how many years to come, so my kids and grandkids can see, what their grandfather did, same as I did growing up, same as I watched with my father growing up. So those first 4 years really got me the most because I wasn't being a complete hunter. When you have bait out, you can kind of hunt a little bit, lazier than you would without having bait. Like I wasn't experienced as I am now to make the adjustments that I knew I needed to make in order to get better. And with public lands, like it's already one of the toughest places to harvest an animal at because of all the hunting pressure. And here in Minnesota, what sucks the most is their small game season always opens the same exact day as archery season. So you can be running trail cameras, getting pictures of nice deer the entire summer, the entire part, going into the early season. But opening morning, you can always count on those deer starting to drop, starting to push back deeper into the woods because of the amount of hunting pressure that are coming in. They're hearing gunshots from bird hunters coming in, grouse hunting. Some ponds will have people out duck hunting or, goose hunting. So those first 4 years, the hardest for me because I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do. I wasn't making the adjustments that I needed to make because I was completely out of my element as compared to hunting down in Florida. Hunting down in Florida, I knew my property from front to back. I knew, what phases I needed to hunt these certain locations. And being here in Minnesota, not knowing anything about hunting in the Midwest other than watching it on TV, I was completely almost like lost in a sense. Like I was lost. So then, I finally got done, playing football and everything, and I was done with school, and I was working full time. So, I was able to go ahead and acquire a lease. So I acquired a lease. I got the lease maybe in October because, I just got tired of hunting public land, finding good deer, finding good spots, but I wasn't getting the daylight pictures that I needed to get because I wasn't hunting them properly. So I was like, well, maybe I need to quit trying to tough it out on public land and get out on a lease and maybe see that the techniques that I'm using are effective. I'm just hunting too many places that have a lot of common pressure and not enough deer, if you can kind of get what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because like you said, when you're on public land, not only is it just you're dealing with everybody else. And not only are they out there hunting deer, but you got, your squirrel, your small game hunting stuff. And all of that stuff is just even more added pressure on the deer. So, yeah, no, I totally get it. But I want to switch gears real quick because I also noticed, like, with your YouTube channel, did you start that around the same time you acquired a lease? And will you be making more videos this hunting season?
I started my YouTube channel at the start of the 2017 season. And what a lot of people don't know, some dudes, my close friends know this. When I killed my buck in the 2016 season, he was less than 7 yards away from me. And what's upsetting is I had my GoPro and my action camera right in front of me. And I didn't even turn either one of them on because I was just so, it was just one of those things where it was like I was so amazed at this buck is like right here in front of me because that whole entire, sequence of events when I killed that buck back in 2016 was crazy. The winters here in Minnesota are typically severely cold. Like my first winter here in 2012 was a record-breaking year with snowfall. I mean, we had snow on the ground, still until I want to say probably close to almost in the middle of June. So it was crazy.
And you're being modest. You can just go ahead and say awful because that's why I describe winter here in Wisconsin. Any time that winter starts basically in October and doesn't end, and like you said, until the first week of June, especially coming from where we're coming from, I categorize as awful, but continue.
Yeah. But what was so strange to me, because I had only had the lease for like 3 weeks, so I ended up throwing out a bunch of those Wild Game Innovations trail cameras out, throwing them out here and there, trying to bounce them around. The lease was only maybe 60 acres, but 40 of it was hardwoods, and then another 20 of it was a hayfield, and it made the shape of a boomerang. So the neighbors across must have 400 acres that they own. They still own it. They got 400 acres. So when I got the lease, the landowner told me to walk over and introduce myself to the neighbors and whatnot, and it's like, there's not a lot of cultural diversity up here. So it's like, so me being a man of color walking up to somebody else's house as a complete stranger, you know, I'm trying not to get shot, but I'm trying to introduce myself and let them know that I'll be hunting here, I'll be hunting there, and everything else like that, you know, that kind of stuff going on. So I done that. It's November 1st, and in November, for the first 5 years that I've been there, never have I ever got 50 to 60 degree temps in November in Minnesota. Never have I got those. So I was spending time with my son, my oldest child, Colton. He was maybe 2 months old, going on 3 months, because he'll be 3 here this August here in a couple of months. So I was spending time with them. I told the lady, hey, you know what, I think I'm going to get out and go check my trail camera. So, you know, I packed up all my stuff. I got in the truck. I started driving, you know, and she called me midways down the road and told me, you know, well, why don't you bring your boat? So I'm like, I'm just taking trail cameras on the edge of the field. I'm not going to need it. So I just got that hunch that, you know, I need to go ahead and turn around and go back and, you know, and grab my bow. So turned around, went back and got it. Keep in mind, I have on a Rocky camouflage Realtree AP zipper hoodie. I'm wearing black sweatpants and steel-toed boots, like steel-toed work boots that stink really bad because of all the hours and miles I've been putting on them, you know, hunting, fishing, all that stuff.
Right.
So I get out into a section because always that first weekend in November is a rifle opener. Here in Minnesota, a lot of people do not bow hunt. A lot of people don't bow hunt. You get more people in the woods. Put it like this. In November, the Minnesota DNR website always crashes because they sell more licenses in that first week in November than they do when archery opens up in September.
Wow.
That's how many people go out and try and get into the woods for rifle season.
That's bananas.
And to be honest, I love it. I love it because it means there's mostly less people in the woods, and you have all that time to get out and enjoy that good weather before people come out. But I get to the lease. I just set up a lock-on tree stand. You can even go see my Instagram post from back then. I went and hung up like a lock-on tree stand for that weekend because I was going to try to, you know, go out with my rifle if I could. So I get into the hardwood set. You know, I pulled out the Hoyman tree saw, so I'm trimming a limb, and I trim a limb, and it drops. And then when it drops, I jumped up 5 does that were bedded maybe 70, 80 yards downwind of me in one of the little funnels. So when I get mad, I get done hanging it up. I put the camera tripod up in the tree, and I get down. So I go sit in the ground blind. So I sit in the ground blind for like 10 minutes. I'm not going to see anything. So I pick up, I grab up the camera and the tripod and everything, and I start, you know, walking to another edge of the field. I purchased a Buck Commander, like little stool, like those little 3-pivot stools that they have. I purchased it a few days ago to sit in the ground box. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to sit on the opposite side of the field, and I'm just going to sit in the Buck Commander chair and sit in the brush. I get over, I sit down, I do my field, you know, initial interview, you know, saying everything that you say, like the time and the weather and everything else like that, introducing yourself. And I take the GoPro off and I put it down. The neighbor cranks up a tractor and drives along the fence line because they have cattle. And he goes start picking up hay bales and he's moving them around. So I can't really hear because the tractor is so loud, it's echoing down in front of me. So I'm just sitting in the brush. It's almost like the scene in a movie where you hear the horse's hooves running, like you can hear something running. So I look to my right because I'm thinking whatever it is running, but it's getting ready to come out of the woods on my right. I turn my head to my left, and this buck is less than 30 yards, and he's trotting straight for me. Because I don't know if he was bedded up on the fence line at the neighbor's property, and they kicked him up, which is what I assume would happen. And he's just running like beeline, straight for me. And I'm in the brush, and I'm sitting like you could barely see the top of my head in the brush. So he didn't have a clue that I was there. He stops running, and he comes down to he's trotting, and he goes to walk off into the brush maybe 13, 14 yards away from me. So I flip my bow up out of my lap, you know, because I had it sitting in my lap. So I flip it up vertically so I can draw back. He sees me do that. He comes out of the brush and starts walking, like trying to figure me out with his head down. And I'm like, oh, my God, like, is he really this stupid, right? And he's walking in front of me. And finally, where he got to where he was almost directly in front of me, so I drew back. And when I drew back, he kind of done the thing where you get a deer that's getting ready to run across the road, but it decides not to, and it almost like it braces itself. And when he done that, I went ahead and I shot him, and he ran about maybe 60 yards, and that was how I got my first buck in Minnesota.
Wow, man!
And the thing that upset me the most was I had my GoPro camcorder. I didn't even hit record on my GoPro, and I didn't even hit record on my camcorder. And he was less than 10 yards. Like, I was able to take a picture on top of the blood from where I made the initial shot, like the impact shot on him.
Mm-hmm.
I took a picture of it and I posted it to show how close it was. And I ended up, recording me walking in there. Once I got my wits about me and I started recording everything, me walking in the track and everything like that. And that was my first video to go over 10,000 views. And I kept having a lot of people telling me, you needed to make a YouTube channel. And so I finally did. I ended up making a YouTube channel and filming a lot more that 2017 season than I did last year.
Man, that is amazing. Because I know even with a lot of my self-filming attempts, they don't always go well, because once the animal gets there, your focus automatically shifts into what you got to do in order to make the kill. So I always applaud people that are able to self-film.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and some people who've never done it, they say, "Oh, it's easy to self-film." I always tell them, I was like, "Man, you're more than welcome to go out and buy some equipment and do it yourself."
Right.
When you have those whitetails that are on you and within shooting range, the slightest movement of you up in that tree on that ground blind, they're alert.
Exactly.
Then the jig is up.
Exactly.
It's up.
Same thing with turkeys.
There's nothing. Exactly. Like, the jig is up, and some people don't understand that, but you probably know this from experience too. Like, when you're putting things out on social media, you have some people that try to, bring hate and bring negativity towards it. And I don't receive a lot of that, because a lot of people see how hard I work when it comes down to my hunting and how hard I go when it's time to my fishing. Like, my father always taught me, everything you do, son, you do it 100%.
Right.
You work as hard as you can. Last year was almost the same thing. I got that, I got my buck that I called the Deer Cast 9, 44 hunts into the season. And I was after him hard. I had 2 encounters with him, and I was able to see him both times. He was out of bow range, but it was just one of those things where I got lucky. Man.
So the last thing that I want to bring up real quick before we get out of here, because I saw it and I read it, and I thought it was really remarkable how you handled it, because I kind of went through something similar. You were out fishing last year and had an encounter with some folks, and they were kind of harassing you and stuff like that. And the way that you handle it was very, textbook, very, respectful and whatnot. And what made me think about this is what you were just saying, about handling the haters and stuff, and, what your dad said to you and whatnot. Did that kind of like come back to you and was just like, all right, let me, try to diffuse this situation before it turns up into something big?
Yeah. Some things that you have that happen, it's like, you got to be able to think, is this incident like really worth, like getting angry about? Like, almost like with the hunter harassment that I went through last season, or the time that you brought up about fishing. Like, I understand that, you get some people that are going to act that way, and there's nothing you can do about it, but you can control how you respond and how you react to it. You know what I mean?
No, so definitely.
Yeah, I always make sure that when I talk to people that I'm respectful. I act in a manner in which, if the authorities are called, I want to make sure that I'm not going to get in any trouble, because I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't say anything wrong.
Right. You were on the side of right.
Yeah. So it's like, but I had that fishing encounter, like you'll even see in the video, it was my first time fishing there. I apologize for things that I didn't even do, or for previous events. And these people were trying to, antagonize us and tell us, that we need to quit fishing in front of, their property, whatever. And I get it. If I work hard for something too, and I kind of want a piece of privacy, I want a peace of mind for something that I purchased and something that I work hard for, I would ask somebody else if they could not do something there too. But the manner in which it happened, they weren't respectful about it. And I'm from the South, so like approaching me about certain things, and you probably understand this too. I don't have a problem talking with people, but it's in the manner in which you approach me.
Exactly.
It's in the connections in your body language. They didn't come out and say, "Hey, can we talk to you for a second?" They came out of their screened-in little house thing or whatever it was, like yelling and swearing and cussing at me. And I had to, hit the top of my GoPro to make sure that it was still running. So that went on for kind of maybe 3 or 4 minutes before we were able to get there. And if the wind wasn't so high, you guys were able to hear a little bit more of it. But being that I want to go into law enforcement, I'm not trying to be one of these guys that, that a department is going to be embarrassed on how I handle a situation, or there's a video up of me being out of line and being out of character over something so minuscule. You know what I mean? So it's like, even the same thing with the hunting situation. So it's going to happen.
And see, that's why I brought it up, because it's remarkable, at least to me, and I commend you for taking the high road, because we already as hunters, we get a bad rap to begin with. And a lot of times, it is from the anti-hunters, but sometimes we as hunters are our own worst enemies. So for me, just to see someone who took a situation like that, like you said, it could have been escalated and been, completely horrible. You diffused it and then you worked it out. And then, like I said, just being a good representative and being a good steward for hunters all around worldwide. So that's why I brought it up, because like I said, I thought it was remarkable how you handled it and diffused it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, I'm kind of shocked that it happened, but I'm not so surprised that it happened, because it does happen. So all I can do is control how I respond to it, That's all I can do. Exactly.
So DJ, before I get you out of here, like I said, you got your YouTube channel, you're on Instagram. Let folks know where they can find you, because I know personally I want to see some more of your videos. So hopefully you break your camera out again this deer season, and even out on the water when you with your bass fishing. But let folks know where they can find you at.
Oh, you guys can find me on Instagram at DJones Outdoors and YouTube at DJones Outdoors. And it's spelled exactly, how I just said it. It's D as in David, J as in Joshua, ONES Outdoors. It's a compound word, There's no underscores, there's no asterisks. It's just DJones Outdoors. And that's where I put and promote a lot of my stuff at.
Awesome. DJ, hey man, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it, and we'll catch up again soon.
All right, anytime. Thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate what you do as a great steward for the great outdoors. We don't get a lot of people. We get a lot of people in this industry who try to do things for the wrong reasons, who try to do things for likes, who try to do things for shares. Like, I enjoy having a conversation with somebody that's a like-minded individual as me when it comes to the great outdoors, and that I know by going back through your history and listening back through your podcast what your goal is and what your vision is and what you promote. Like, I absolutely love that. We get some people that they give us, bad stereotypes, and you're not one of those people. So that's why whenever you asked me to do it, I cleared my schedule. I was like, yep, I'm going to do it.
Man, I appreciate that.
'Cause I don't mind.
I appreciate it. All right. Once again, thanks to DJ Jones for taking the time to stop by the Bryant Land Country Podcast. Definitely enjoyed talking to the young man, and hopefully looking forward to seeing what he puts down this year during his hunting season, especially up there in Minnesota. Before I get out of here real quick, couple things. Happy belated Father's Day to all my fathers out there. I hope you guys had a great Father's Day. Hopefully you guys got some good gift cards to the sporting goods store of your choice. Always, a good gift on Father's Day. It's what I tell, my kids to get me. Also, one more thing before I get out of here, just make sure you check out the BryantLandCountry.com website, BryantLandCountry.com. We got merch, we got videos, and we got all the episodes of the Bryant Land Country Podcast. So one stop, man. Make sure y'all go and check that out. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, and I will catch you guys next week for another episode of the Bryant Land Country Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Bryant Land Country Podcast, hosted by AB3. Please leave us a positive review and 5-star rating on iTunes. Be sure to check out our podcast section on our website, BryantLandCountry.com, for previous podcasts. Check us out on Instagram at Official Bryant Land and Twitter at 3BryantLand. This has been an AB3 Media production. Join us next time for another edition of the Bryant Land Country Podcast.